The crunch of tires on fresh gravel was the first sound of Christmas, a familiar herald of the family's arrival. From the kitchen window, I watched the headlights cut through the gentle twilight, painting the frost-kissed lawn in brief, sweeping arcs. Inside, our home was a sanctuary of warmth against the winter chill, every surface polished to a soft glow in the light of a dozen candles. The air itself was thick with the rich, soul-deep aromas of my cooking, smoked ham studded with cloves, collard greens simmering with turkey necks, and the sweet, yeasty promise of freshly baked rolls. It was a symphony of scents I had conducted for 20 years, the very essence of our family's Christmas Eve. "They are here," I called out, wiping my hands on my apron, a flutter of pure joy in my chest. I smoothed the fabric of my red dress, a bold, festive choice that made me feel like the heart of this home, which I was. I had to be. James was already at the door, pulling it open before the first knock could land. A blast of cold air rushed in, carrying with it the laughter and chatter of my family. My sister, Carol, entered first, her arms laden with brightly wrapped packages, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Behind her came my brother David, his booming voice filling the entryway as he clapped James on the shoulder. "James, my man, the house looks incredible, smells even better." Then came the true lights of my life. My daughter Simone glided in, a vision in emerald green, her smile instantly brightening the room. She leaned in to kiss my cheek. "Everything looks perfect, Mom." Her fiancé, Michael, followed, a quiet, steady presence always at her side, his arm draped comfortably around her waist. This was the picture, this was the tradition, this was everything I worked for. "Everyone, get your coats off," I instructed, my voice bubbling with a warmth I genuinely felt. "The eggnog is on the table, and it is the good kind, David, so no complaints." I moved through the room, a conductor ensuring every instrument was in tune. I adjusted an ornament on the tree, a clumsy ceramic angel Simone made in second grade, and felt a pang of sweet nostalgia. But my eyes, as they always did, found James. He had closed the door against the cold and was now helping Carol with her coat, his movements efficient, practiced. He smiled, he laughed at David's jokes, he accepted the bottle of wine Michael offered. Yet from my vantage point I could see it. The smile did not reach his eyes. Those deep brown eyes, which usually held a quiet, steady light, seemed distant, focused on some point far beyond the festively decorated walls of our home. He was here, but he was not here. I pushed the thought away. It was the season. The end-of-year stress at the law firm was always immense. He had been working late for weeks, his shoulders permanently set with a tension I had tried to massage away each night. That was all it was. It had to be. We settled in the living room, the fire crackling in the hearth. The tree, a majestic fir I had insisted on, twinkled with white lights and decades of collected ornaments, each one a memory. Simone curled up on the rug near the fireplace, her head resting against Michael's knee. "So Michael," David began, raising his glass of eggnog. "Any new developments at the architecture firm? Landed any skyscrapers lately?" Michael smiled modestly. "No skyscrapers, David, mostly residential additions, but it is steady work." "Steady is good," David affirmed, always the pragmatist. He was the rock of the family, the one who encouraged us all to just enjoy the moment. He turned to James. "And you, James, wrapped up that big merger? Time to unplug, my friend." James, who had been staring into the flames, jerked his head up. "What? Oh, yes, mostly wrapped up." He took a long sip of his drink, not meeting anyone's gaze. "There are always loose ends." "Dad, are you all right?" Simone's voice was soft, laced with concern. "You seem a million miles away." I saw a flash of something, irritation, fear, cross James's face before he masked it with another one of those hollow smiles. "I am fine, sweetheart, just tired. It has been a long year." He reached over and patted her hand. "Do not worry about me. This is your holiday." "Simone is right, James," Carol chimed in, her perceptive eyes narrowing slightly. "You do look peaked. Maya, are you feeding this man enough? He looks like he has not slept." I felt a defensive heat rise in my cheeks. "I feed him just fine, Carol. He is just working too hard. He needs this break." I stood up, needing to move, to do something. "Speaking of feeding people, I need to check the greens, and we are running low on eggnog. I made a second batch in the garage fridge. I will be right back." The kitchen was a haven of organized chaos. I stirred the pots mechanically, the wooden spoon moving through the collard greens without really seeing them. The cheerful noise from the living room seemed to recede, replaced by the low thrum of my own worry. It was more than work stress. I had seen James under pressure for 20 years. This was different. This was a withdrawal, a quiet shutting of a door I had always had a key to. I needed that eggnog, an excuse to be alone for a moment, to breathe. I slipped through the side door into the attached garage. The concrete floor was cold beneath my thin holiday shoes. The air was sharp, smelling of gasoline and pine from the Christmas tree trunk we had yet to dispose of. The second refrigerator hummed in the corner. But as I reached for the handle, I heard it, a low, urgent murmur. It was coming from James's study, the door of which opened into the garage. He must have slipped away when I left the living room. The door was not quite closed, leaving a sliver of yellow light. My heart hammered against my ribs. I told myself to turn around, to go back to the kitchen, to my family. This was private, but my feet were rooted to the spot. I could not move. His voice was a tense whisper, strained in a way I had never heard before. I told you, not now, I cannot talk, it is Christmas Eve. A pause. I could hear the muffled tinny sound of a voice on the other end, but could not make out the words. My breath caught in my throat. I do not care what it costs, James hissed, his voice dropping even lower, filled with a desperation that chilled me more than the garage air. You have to make this go away. She can never know. Do you understand me? Maya can never find out. The world stopped. The hum of the refrigerator faded into a dull roar in my ears. The words hung in the cold air, each one a shard of ice piercing the fragile bubble of my Christmas joy. She can never know. Maya can never find out. What could I never know? What was so terrible that it had to be hidden from me on Christmas Eve? I stood there, frozen for what felt like an eternity. Then I heard the creak of his desk chair. He was ending the call. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I could not be found here. I could not let him see the devastation that must be written on my face. I forced my legs to move, stumbling back to the kitchen door. I grasped the handle, my hand trembling so violently I could barely turn it. I slipped back into the warmth, the stark contrast of the festive atmosphere making me feel dizzy. The laughter from the living room now sounded like a cruel mockery. I leaned against the counter, my knuckles white as I gripped the cool granite. I took deep, shuddering breaths, trying to force the panic down, to rebuild the walls that had just been shattered. I could feel the cracks spreading through me, a web of betrayal and fear. "Mom," Simone's voice called from the doorway. "Everything okay? You have been in here a while. Did you find the eggnog?" I turned slowly, my body moving as if through syrup. I arranged my face into what I hoped was a familiar, loving expression. I could feel the muscles straining against the weight of the lie. "I am fine, honey," I said, my voice miraculously steady. "I just could not remember where I put it. It is right here." I held up the carton I had grabbed blindly from the garage fridge. My smile felt like a brittle piece of glass, a fragile mask carefully placed over a crumbling foundation. Let us go back to the party. It is Christmas, after all. The silence in the house the day after Christmas was a physical thing. It was heavy and cold, a stark contrast to the warm, noisy chaos of just 24 hours prior. The scent of pine from the tree had turned sharp, almost bitter. The twinkling lights I had so carefully strung now felt like a mockery, tiny, cheerful witnesses to the death of something I had not even known was sick. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, my slippers whispering against the hardwood floors. The discarded wrapping paper had been bagged up, the leftovers wrapped and stored, but a few stray pine needles and a forgotten ribbon under the sofa were all that remained of our celebration. The perfection I had fought so hard to create had evaporated, leaving behind this hollow, chilling quiet. James was in his study, pretending to read a book. I stood in the doorway for a long moment just watching him. He had the same posture he always did, but there was a new tension in his shoulders, a readiness. He knew. He had to know why I was standing there. The trembling started deep inside me, a seismic shift of heartbreak and fury that traveled up to my hands, to my voice. "We need to talk," I said. My voice did not sound like my own, it was thin and strained. He closed the book slowly, placing it on the desk with exaggerated care. He did not look at me. "Maya, can it not wait? I have a lot of work to catch up on after the holiday." "No," I said, the words sharp and final. I walked into the room, the air feeling thick and difficult to breathe. It cannot wait. Who is she? The pretense shattered. He finally looked at me, and in his eyes I saw not shock, but a weary resignation. It was that resignation that confirmed everything. The ground did not just fall away, it dissolved into a black, sucking void. "Maya, please," he began, his voice a low plea. But I was not in a mood for pleas. "The perfume, James, it was on your scarf. It is not mine. I would not wear something so obvious." I wrapped my arms around myself, holding my body together. And the text message last night, "Merry Christmas, my love." Who sends that to their boss at midnight on Christmas? Who? He ran a hand over his face, and I saw the weight of 2 years of lies in that gesture. 2 years. The number echoed in my mind, a death knell. Our entire life, the family we had built, the history we shared, it had all been happening alongside this other, secret life. "Her name is Lena," he said, the words dropping into the silence like stones. "It is Lena." Hearing the name made it real. Lena was no longer a phantom, a vague suspicion. She was a person with a name. The affair was a person with a name. The pain was so acute it was almost blinding, a white-hot fire in my chest. "How long?" I demanded, my voice cracking. He could not meet my gaze. 2 years. 2 years? Simone was applying to colleges 2 years ago. David had his first serious girlfriend. 2 years of birthday parties, of anniversaries, of quiet nights on this very sofa. 2 years of a double life. The calculation was a poison spreading through my veins. 2 years, the words were a whisper, but they carried the force of a scream. "You have been lying to us for 2 years. How could you? How could you look me in the eye every day and—" My sentence was severed by the sound of the front door opening and closing. Simone and David were home from their early morning outing with friends. I had forgotten they were even gone. Panic flashed in James's eyes, a final, feeble attempt to contain the explosion. But it was too late. The door to the study was still open. Simone's voice, bright and lively, called out, "Mom, Dad, we brought bagels." She appeared in the doorway, a paper bag in her hand, a smile on her face that died the second she saw us. She saw me, standing rigid, tears now streaming down my face despite my best efforts to stop them. She saw her father, pale and defeated in his chair. The festive energy she brought in with her evaporated, replaced by a chilling understanding. "What is going on?" Simone asked, her voice dropping to a hush. David appeared behind her, his taller frame filling the space. His eyes, so like his father's, darted between us, sensing the danger. James stood up, a pathetic gesture of authority. "This is between your mother and me. Please, give us some privacy." But I was done with privacy. The dam had broken. "Your father," I said, my voice trembling with a fury that was finally overtaking the heartbreak, "has been having an affair, for 2 years, with a woman named Lena." The shockwave hit them visibly. Simone recoiled as if struck. The bag of bagels fell from her hand, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Her face transformed from confusion to a pure, incandescent rage and a heartbeat. "You did what?" she snarled, stepping toward her father. Her loyalty was absolute, a shield slamming down in my defense. "You cheating bastard. How could you do this to Mom, to us?" David, however, stood frozen in the doorway. His face was a mess of conflict. "Whoa, wait," he stammered. "Dad, is this true? There has to be some mistake. Maybe it is just a work thing, a misunderstanding." He was pleading, not with me, but with the universe to rearrange itself into a less painful shape. "There is no misunderstanding, David," I said, my voice flat and cold. "He confessed." "But why?" David asked, looking at his father with a hurt that was younger than Simone's rage. It was the hurt of a boy who still believed his dad was a hero. James looked at his son, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the old James, the one who would have done anything to protect his children from pain. "It is complicated, son," he said, his voice thick. "I never meant for any of you to find out like this." "Complicated?" Simone shrieked. "You have been lying to us for 2 years. You are a liar. You do not get to say it is complicated." She turned to me, her eyes blazing. "Mom, what do you need? Do you want him to leave? I will pack his bags myself." The confrontation spiraled from there, a tornado of accusations, tears, and shouted words that could never be taken back. Simone was my avenging angel, her fury a comforting heat in the cold ruin of my marriage. David was the reluctant peacemaker, trying to calm his sister, trying to get his father to explain, desperately seeking a reason that would make the betrayal less absolute. He was struggling with a loyalty divided, and the sight of it broke my heart a second time. James became defensive, his shame curdling into anger. "You do not understand the pressure I have been under," he snapped at Simone. "You have no idea what it is like." "I understand that you are a coward," she shot back. It was David who finally put a stop to it, his voice cracking with emotion. "Just stop. Everyone just stop. This is not helping." He looked at me, his eyes begging. "Mom, can we please just take a breath, please?" We did stop. The shouting ceased, but the silence that returned was worse, filled with the wreckage of our family. James retreated into a sullen quiet, and I could not even look at him. Simone stormed out of the room, and I heard her footsteps pound up the stairs and her bedroom door slam shut. David lingered for a moment, looking lost, before he too disappeared. The rest of the day passed in a horrible, slow-motion blur. James stayed in the study. I drifted through the house, mechanically cleaning things that were already clean, but my mind was not idle. Simone's rage was not passive. From behind her closed door, I could hear the furious tapping of her keyboard. She was not grieving, she was investigating. Later that evening, she came into my bedroom, where I sat staring at the wall, numb. Her face was grim, lit by the cold glow of her phone screen. "It was more than just an affair, Mom," she said, her voice low and steady. She sat beside me on the bed. "I have been looking at the shared credit card account, the one you use for household stuff. There are charges, Mom, regular charges. A fancy hotel downtown, charges at a jewelry store I have never heard of, withdrawals from an ATM in a part of the city he never has business in." She showed me the screen. Line after line of transactions, a map of his deception. My eyes, dry and sore, scanned the dates, the amounts. It was a second life, paid for with the money that was supposed to be for our life. "And then I found this," she whispered, her finger tapping on a final entry. It was a recurring payment, a monthly automatic withdrawal from our joint savings account. It was labeled with a corporate name that meant nothing to me, but the amount was significant. I did a search on the company name. It is a shell company, Mom, but the address it is registered to, it is an apartment building. A nice one. The betrayal shifted shape again, turning darker, more calculating. It was not just a crime of the heart, it was a financial one. He had not just given this woman his heart, he had given her our security, our future. He had built her a secret life with the bricks of our own. "He has an apartment for her," I said, the words tasting like ash. It was not a question. Simone nodded, her jaw tight. "I think he does. This was not just an affair. This was a double life." We sat there in the dim light, the truth settling over us, heavy and suffocating. The man I had shared a bed with for 25 years was a stranger. The foundation of our family was not just cracked, it had been hollowed out. And as the full scope of his deception began to dawn on me, a new, chilling thought crept into my mind. If he could hide an apartment, what else was he capable of hiding? The unraveling was only just beginning, and I feared what other threads we would pull, and what would be left when it all finally came apart. The silence in the living room was not a quiet one. It was a heavy, thick thing, pressing down on all of us, punctuated only by the frantic drumming of my heart against my ribs. The children were assembled on the sofa, a united front of anxious faces. Sarah, my daughter, clutched a throw pillow so tightly her knuckles were white. David, my son, stared at the floor, his jaw set in a hard line. And I sat opposite them in my worn armchair, a fortress that felt suddenly frail. James stood by the fireplace, his back to the room, a silhouette against the cold, gray light of the afternoon. He was examining a photograph on the mantel, a relic from a vacation 20 years ago, all of us squinting against a sun that felt like it belonged to another lifetime. I had called this meeting. After the confrontation with Sarah, after the long, sleepless night of sifting through the wreckage of my memories, the truth had settled upon me not as a shock, but as a final, grim verdict. There were no more questions to ask, no more excuses to make. The outline of my life, which I had always believed was drawn in permanent ink, was actually drawn in sand, and the tide was coming in. "I have something to say," I began, my voice sounding unnaturally calm, a flat pond over a deep, turbulent current. "It is something I should have said a long time ago." James did not turn around, but his shoulders stiffened. David finally looked up, his eyes wary. Sarah leaned forward, a silent gesture of support. I took a breath that did not seem to fill my lungs. For 42 years, I have built my life around this family. Around you, James. I have folded my own dreams, my own voice into the background. I told myself it was for the best, that a good wife, a good mother, makes sacrifices. That piece was more important than being right. I paused, gathering the words that felt like shards of glass in my throat. But I have come to understand that the peace I was preserving was not mine. It was a fragile, artificial peace built on my silence, and it has cost me everything I was. Now James turned. His face was pale, his expression a complex map of defiance and dawning fear. Maya, what is this? We had an argument. We can move past it. It is not about one argument, James, I said, and I was surprised by the steadiness in my voice. It is about a lifetime of them. It is about the promotion you demanded I decline when David was 2. It is about my mother's funeral, which you said was an unnecessary expense. It is about every time I wanted to take a class, see a friend, or even express an opinion that differed from your own, and was met with a wall of cold disapproval until I capitulated. You have not been a partner. You have been a warden, and I have been your prisoner. The words hung in the air, stark and undeniable. Sarah let out a small, choked sound. David looked from me to his father, his confusion turning to something darker, something like anger. That is not fair, James said, his voice rising. That is a monstrous distortion. I provided for this family. I built a life for us. Everything I did was for you. No, I interrupted, and the finality in that single syllable silenced him. Everything you did was for you. We were merely the supporting cast in the story of your life. Well, my story is not over, and I am taking back the pen. I looked at my children, their faces a mirror of my own pain. I love you both more than anything in this world, but I can no longer live this way. I can no longer model this kind of slow death for my daughter. I will not have her think this is what love looks like. I turned my gaze back to James. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, each tick a heartbeat closer to the end. I want a divorce, James. The word fell into the silence not like a bomb, but like a stone into a deep well, and we all waited for the sound of it hitting the bottom. James's face crumpled. The anger drained away, replaced by a stunned, profound confusion. He looked old suddenly, older than I had ever seen him. The imposing figure he had always cut seemed to shrink, until he was just a man in a too-large cardigan, standing by a cold fireplace. You cannot mean that, he whispered. After everything, after all this time. I have never meant anything more, I said. It is the only choice I have left, the choice for my own peace. He searched my face, and for the first time in 4 decades, I did not look away. I let him see the full, unvarnished truth in my eyes, the decades of resentment, the bottomless well of loneliness, and the fragile, nascent determination that had finally broken through. And I saw the moment he understood. It was not an understanding that brought anger, but a devastating, horrifying clarity. He saw the damage, and he saw that it was irreversible. The wall he had built around himself cracked, and for a single, breathtaking moment, I saw the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago, lost and scared and utterly broken. He nodded slowly, a terrible final gesture. I see, he said, his voice hollow. I see. He did not argue. He did not plead. He simply walked across the room, his steps slow and heavy on the hardwood floor. He paused at the doorway, his hand on the frame, and looked back at the 3 of us, at his family. His gaze lingered on me, and in that look was an entire lifetime of missed chances and unspoken regrets. Then he turned and walked out into the hall. We heard the soft click of the closet door as he retrieved his coat, the faint rustle of fabric, and then the sound that would echo in my mind for months to come. The heavy, definitive thud of the front door closing. The era was over, just like that. The months that followed were a strange, liminal space. There was the stark emptiness of the house, which at first was a chilling presence. I would wake up and for a moment forget, and then the silence would rush in to remind me. But slowly, day by day, that emptiness began to feel less like a loss and more like space. My space. I painted the bedroom a soft, warm cream. I left my books on the nightstand. I cooked meals I wanted to eat when I wanted to eat them. The children were my anchors. David, once so hesitant, became fiercely protective, checking in daily. And Sarah, my brave girl, she bloomed in the aftermath. She would come over with her daughter, Lily, and we would sit in the garden that was now truly mine. We would talk about everything and nothing. We were rebuilding, not the family we had been, but the family we could become. Today, the sun is warm on my face. I am in that garden, surrounded by the lazy hum of bees. Sarah is laughing, chasing a delighted, squealing Lily around the lawn. David is on the patio, expertly manning the grill, telling a story that makes his wife shake her head with a smile. I look at them, at this mosaic of love and life we have created from the broken pieces, and I feel a sense of peace so profound it is almost a physical warmth in my chest. The foundation of family love has endured, just as I knew it would. It has been reconfigured, yes, but it is strong. It is real. And then I see the envelope on the garden table. It had been mixed in with the day's mail, a thick, cream-colored envelope with a law firm's return address engraved on the corner. I had been avoiding it all afternoon, this final piece of bureaucratic finality. Taking a slow sip of my iced tea, I reach for it. My fingers are steady. I slide a thumb under the flap and tear it open, pulling out the crisp, heavy papers within. My eyes scan the legalese, past the case number and the formal declarations, until they find the line I am looking for. And there it is, the final judgment, the official end. I read the words once, then again, letting their meaning settle. The laughter of my granddaughter seems to fade into the background for a moment. I look up from the paper, my gaze drifting past my happy, busy family, past the fence to the quiet street beyond. It is over, truly over. A chapter of my life, 42 years long, is now a closed book. The freedom is exhilarating and terrifying and vast. I take a deep breath, the scent of cut grass and roasting meat filling my senses. It is a new beginning. But as I sit there, the official document in my hand, I cannot help but wonder what the next chapter will hold for a woman who is only just learning how to live.